Okay, we are back on our site here. We are actually a week out from planting the trees. I tried to get out here a couple times this week and do some follow-up videos, but it was just too darn windy. For those of you who maybe don't live in Iowa or aren't aware, Iowa, depending on the source you're looking at, is either the 4th or the 5th windiest state in the country. So it's sometimes hard to get some video with good audio quality and projects like this. But we're going to give it another shot today. Not going to let perfection get in the way of progress, and I want to give you an update on our project, but also do a video. I get asked a lot of questions sometimes on, kind of tools of the trade, what we do for our larger projects, and so I want to do a quick video on those tools that we use and some things to consider when you're doing really any tree planting, but certainly a larger tree project like this. But I want to zip around here and show you what we have here for our project. So really excited with how this turned out. Just very, very gratifying to see what we've accomplished in a short amount of time, and just awesome to finally see the final product after 6 months of work, planning, getting everything lined up, ready to go for a larger project like this. And then this is kind of the before and after, and I've showed this on a previous clip, but this particular tree line we planted 2 years ago, 2023, and it's 38 trees, silver maples and hackberries, and they are just taking off really well. Beautiful. We didn't lose any of them, which is very rare. So we wrapped it around the fence line here, and we did another 70 trees. So we have about 110 trees, 108 trees, so to speak. And we have, on this line, we did red oak and hackberry. So we changed it up a little bit just for some variety and some color. Red oaks, of course, are, probably the most beautiful oak tree. And so yeah, I'll do a follow-up video here soon, kind of giving progress on how the trees are taking. We looked at them the other day, maybe 2 days ago, and almost all of them are starting to bud out. There's 4 or 5 of them that haven't really started to bud out yet, but they just, some of the smaller ones, they might just be a few days behind. So we'll do a follow-up on that at a later date. But I wanted to take a moment here to do a video on some of the tools that we utilize for our project like this, and we'll just kind of start from the beginning, just beginning to end, what we need to accomplish something like this. And so earlier clip I mentioned you're going to want to mow the grass down about as short as you can get it. So obviously you're going to need a mower, push mower, zero turn, whatever, tractor mower, anything to just cut down the tall grass. You can see we're out here in a former cattle pasture that we still utilize for hay production. So there's quite a bit of tall grass over here, and I just mowed it down about as short as I could get it. That way you're not fighting those tall grasses and weeds when you're doing your auger work, when you're drilling, and really just when you're walking back and forth from your vehicle or your ATV or whatever it may be that you're using to do your project. You're not walking through that tall, thick grass. So you're going to want to cut that down short as you can. So that's the first thing. You got to get out here and mow the grass down. And next thing, kind of going from the beginning there, after that is you're going to want to mark your spacing for your trees. And so to do that, we use a 200-foot reel tape measure. So it winds up. There's a handle right there that you can wind it. Also has a metal clasp here on the end that you can stick a stake in the ground if you're by yourself, and kind of pull it from that stake in the ground. Obviously you saw from previous clips that we use 2 people. That's probably the fastest way to do it. So that's really a awesome tool. They're 25 or 30 bucks. They're pretty inexpensive for the value you get in terms of the efficiency that you get out of a tool like that for a longer space like this. And so like you saw in the earlier videos, we basically took it all the way out 200 feet, and then we started putting our flags in the ground. And that's the next thing, is you want to have some different colored flags. So we had white flags, and we had pink, and then at the end we had some orange ones. But essentially we had flags that marked the alternating trees. And so whatever trees, if you're planting multiple varieties, helpful to have some of those little metal flags with different colors on them, so you know exactly which tree you're putting in where. And you get those flags in the ground. Also helps to maybe have a second tape measure. You saw from a previous clip, we would take the main tape measure down out 200 feet, and then we were measuring the distance also from the fence line over there. So we were trying to get a certain distance off of the fence line, and so it's helpful to have multiple measurement tools. So you got your longer one, you got maybe a 25 footer or larger tape measure. That comes in really handy. So so you've mowed the grass down, you've come out, you've measured your spacing for your trees, you've got your flags in the ground. So the next step then is to come out and get your auger out or get your shovel out. And you know, if you're doing anything more than like 4 or 5 trees, I highly recommend that you get your hands on one of these Earthquake brand or similar brand augers, because they just make everything so much easier. If you've never dug a hole for a tree, even digging one hole with a spade is very labor intensive. It's very, very time consuming. And like I said, if you do more than 4 or 5 of them, you're going to be pretty much beat just from doing that number. So, you know, you can get these auger type machines. You can rent them from the, you know, Ace Hardware or somewhere like that. They usually have rentals for these types of equipment or pieces of equipment. If you're going to do more than one project, it's almost more cost effective to just buy one if you can. They're about $300, but worth its weight in gold when you start thinking about, you know, we augered out essentially 70 holes for these trees, and we did it in a very short amount of time. I'm talking maybe a couple of hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It was a very quick process. So yeah, that's just, if you're going to do more than 4 or 5 trees, again, I know I keep repeating it, but gosh, this is just such an awesome tool. It doesn't take 2 people to run it. There's a handle there on either side for 2 people to run it, but you can run it yourself. Just make sure, you know, safety first. You get good positioning around it so that it doesn't recoil on you or jerk back if you hit a rock or something. So just pay attention to that. One of the things I've also seen done, and we've done it in a previous project, but essentially, you know, you think about drilling the hole, how deep do you go? Well, sometimes people will just even spray paint part of the auger. So they get going down, you know, whatever your tree calls for, however big your root system is. But generally speaking, that's sometimes between 12 and 18 inches. So sometimes people will mark, you know, halfway up, or they'll just take it all the way, whatever the case may be. If you're doing a large number of trees and you're going a similar depth, sometimes people just spray paint, you know, pink or yellow or something, and they know where exactly to stop. But on that note, it is sometimes helpful if you're trying to be really precise. Get a hold of a yardstick. You can drop that in the hole. You can you know, get a good idea after you get going. If you're doing a lot of trees, you'll get pretty good at it in terms of judging the depth. But if you want to get really specific, you can drop a yardstick in there and measure it. You're still, even if you buy the auger, you're still going to want to have a good spade on hand, because root systems will, some of them are really large, some of them are medium, some of them are tiny, some of them jut out sideways. So you're still going to have to probably do some edge digging or inside the hole, chipping away at the wall to make some room for the root system, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But it's a lot less work. You know, obviously you've already augered the hole out, so you're just kind of doing a little bit of finish digging, I call it, to get that tree in there. So anyway, those are kind of some of the tools you want to have on hand when you think about, you know, actually doing the physical work of drilling the hole and prepping for planting the tree. So those are some things to keep in mind on that front. So then once you've got the tree ready and you're getting close to getting ready to put it in the ground, one of the next steps is to get a hold of some sort of fertilizer or something to give your root system a really good start. We use these packets, and I don't know if it'll focus very well, but it's called NutriPro. So what you do is you dig your hole, and then you drop that down in the bottom of the hole, and you cover it with 1 inch or 2 of dirt, and then you plant the tree on top of that. And so that just gives the tree the best start, you know, at life, essentially, once you transplant it. It provides nutrients for up to 2 years after you plant it. So it's a slow release packet. Buy them in bulk. They're not terribly expensive. but you drop it in the hole, cover it with an inch or two of dirt, and then you're ready to plant the tree. So once you've planted the tree, you got the tree in the ground, then we start thinking about, okay, how do we protect the tree? So that's the next part of it. So then you kind of think about your system for protection. So you have your weed mat here, which these weed mats, they come in rolls almost like old school garbage bags. There's kind of a serrated edge there. You just tear it off. It's a square. I'll go over here. You've seen this on the video, but it's essentially a square like that. Goes around the tree, helps prevent the weeds from popping up, and keeps the weeds off, the weeds and the grass off of the base of the tree. Helps with, you know, some of the competition from early part of the tree's life. Again, giving it the best start. So you've put a packet in there to help fertilize it. You've got the weeds off of it. And then we want to think about getting protection around the base of the tree and all the way up. We're in Iowa, so we get hail. That's a very bad thing, especially for younger trees. So we get these 5-foot tree tubes. They come flat like this. Again, we buy them in bulk along with the packet and the weed mats. And you essentially, they come in flat like that, and you just roll them and then put them around the tree, and you zip tie them to the T-post. These zip ties, they actually are reusable, and that's a cool thing to have, because you're going to be doing what I call tree maintenance. So these zip ties, I don't know if you can see it there, but there's a little clasp here where it just loosens up, and you can take off the tree tube or just lift up the tree tube all at once. You can pull the weeds off if there are any. You can get dead leaves off in the fall or the spring, whatever the case is there, and then you can put it back down and you can zip tie it again. If you are using traditional zip ties, you're essentially going to be, you know, going through a lot of them. You're going to be spending a lot of money and a lot of frustration just wasting zip ties. So these actually come from the same source. So we get the weed mats, we get the fertilizer packets, the tree tubes, the zip ties, all from the same place. It's called Tree Pro. Not a sponsor or anything. I don't work with them. We've been getting stuff from them for many years. We've had really good luck with them. And yeah, again, we just buy it all in bulk. And so one of the things I want to mention there, I forgot to mention on the mats, is this also comes from the same company. 6-inch stakes that you stake in the ground. You can put one on each corner, get it tacked down. You might need a hammer there to tap it in if you run into a rock or something like that. So some other things to consider. Lastly, in terms of like major sort of materials that you're going to need, is we have our T-posts here. And we played around with different sizes over the years. We put 5-footers in, we put 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. I think we've decided that the 6-footers are probably the best in terms of supporting it optimally. And you'll see from over here, I'll do a side-by-side for you so you can see. So you've got a 5-foot tree tube and you've got a 6-foot T-post. So that T-post is going to go in the ground, you know, 12 to 16 inches, whatever, maybe less. But you can kind of play around with that. But you want to cover obviously the base where that sharp edge isn't sticking up from the T-post. And so that's going to go in the ground. You want to give as much support on this top of T-post to the tube as possible, so that the wind's not grabbing it and bending it over and flipping it around. So really with the 6-footer, 6-foot T-post, 5-foot tree tube is kind of the optimal setup. I'll go over here and I'll do a side-by-side with what we did a few years ago. And we kind of, you know, you learn. These are some taller ones. I think these are 7-footers maybe. And you can see what the problem creates later on. When the tree actually starts growing out, it starts to rub against those sharp edges on the T-posts. And so we're gonna have to go back down and either push those in more or get some like Coban type material and wrap that so those sharp edges aren't sticking out. So that's just a comparison. So again, kind of trial and error, but we've determined that the 6-footers are probably the best for our purposes. And once you think about all those materials put together, again, this is kind of what it looks like. You've got weed mat, you've got the T-post, you've got the 5-foot tree tube, you've got your reusable zip ties, and that's really the majority of the material that you need to do a project like this. There's some miscellaneous stuff that you might want to consider to have on hand. Obviously, you're going to need gloves, maybe a hand shovel. Knee saver is an awesome tool. You're going to be going up and down a lot, be working with dirt, getting kind of down on the ground. Knee saver is a good tool to have, especially for those of us with joint issues. Scissors, you know, some of the miscellaneous smaller items. Watering, you know, cup with a handle comes in great. 5-gallon buckets, I haven't mentioned that yet. 6 to 8 of them is kind of a good number, because as you drill out the holes, you're going to have excess dirt. So you're going to want 2 or 3 5-gallon buckets for excess dirt. You're probably going to want 2 buckets with water. Another bucket just to carry tools around, maybe with a lid. That's very handy. And then we use our very fancy large container trash can to transfer the trees in bulk to the site. So if we're doing a large project like this, we'll fill that full of water halfway to soak the root systems for the trees, and then we'll just leave it in the back of the truck like this, and then we'll transfer that to a 5-gallon bucket with water as we're going to each tree. That way we don't have to keep making trips back to the house or to the garage or wherever to get more trees. They're all in the truck, they're in one place, and it makes it a lot faster of a process. Finally, I don't believe I talked about the post pounder. So you saw from the video, my hack for putting T-posts in the ground is to water at the base, get the base a little bit moist, come back later, and then as that moisture has seeped into the ground, that T-post will actually just kind of slide in like butter. So you saw in the video, I didn't actually have to use the post pounder all that much, except towards the end of the tree line, which is because we started watering first on that side of it, so the ground had dried up a little bit more. So I had to use it just a little bit towards the end of the T-post installation. But really, if you water the ground with 2 or 3 pints of water, let that soak in for a little while, come back a few hours later, you're not going to really need to mess around with a post pounder too much, which is great because they can be really heavy. I mean, you can get super light ones, but the problem with the light ones is then you don't have the force that you need to get it into the ground if the ground is hard. So the light ones, there's a con, they don't really work that well. So if you go heavy, they work really well, but then you're lifting them up over your head a lot and over your, your shoulders, and they can be really hard to maneuver. It can actually be dangerous if you got other people around. You can get them way up to 20, 25, 30 pounds. So anyway, this one's a pretty heavy one. I don't use it a whole lot, thankfully. So you can definitely want to have it on site in case you need it, but think about, kind of what you want to do in terms of the weight of it. Maybe middle of the road or whatever, based on how comfortable you are with lifting it over your head a bunch of times. But hopefully you won't need to do that if the ground's soft. So yeah, so that's really kind of tools of the trade, again, for any tree project, certainly a bigger one like this. And you saw us using the flatbed truck here, the side-by-side, certainly those things come in handy if you're out doing a bigger project like this. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about anything. Again, Tree Pro is where we get a lot of these materials, and this is called NutriPro for the packet that goes in the base there. So anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.